Good morning, everyone, on a beautiful Saturday morning, although in the Bay Area is raining and we're all like freaking out. So um, we'll just start in just a second, a short video.
Welcome to today's session, everyone.
We are Pre-Med CC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021.
Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities, with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone.
We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students,
people that lack the financial resources, or just those who do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific Standard Time.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all of our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel.
Many of our sessions will end up with a Q&A with the speakers.
Any questions that you have, you may put it in the Q&A session on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answer.
After you have attended our event, you can log into our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you will be awarded a certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with the upcoming events or just want to tell your pre-med friends about the Pre-Med CC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok as @PreMedCC.
Alrighty, welcome everyone. We're gonna have each medical student introduce themselves, and then when they're done, you could just put your questions in the Q&A and we'll ask them. We don't really have anything prepared, so this is kind of your session on everything and all things you want to know from all these medical students from across the country. So we'll get started with Madeline.
Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Madeline, and I am currently a first-year medical student at the University of Rochester in Rochester, New York. I started off at a community college. So originally I went to Santa Barbara City College in Santa Barbara, California, and then I transferred to University of California, Los Angeles, where I earned my undergraduate degree. And now here I am at my first year of medical school. So I'm excited to be back and answer any questions that you may have about the transferring or getting into medical school process. I know it can be a little daunting. So yeah, and just I'm currently undecided on a specialty, although I've been recently doing some cardiology shadowing and thought it was very interesting. But I'm trying to keep an open mind as a first year. And then a fun fact about me, I'll just say my favorite food, which I really love pizza and pasta, and being in New York has been very fun for that. So I'm going to pass it on to the next medical student. I'm just going to go alphabetically since it looks like BA was the first alphabetically. So let's go with Jose.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Jose Guerrera. I'm a first-year medical student at Kaiser Permanente Bernard J. Tyson School of Medicine. I started my educational journey in San Diego at a community college there, transferred to UCLA, where I got my undergrad in biophysics and a minor in Spanish. And then I bounced around for a few years and then did a postbac at UC Davis. And then I applied to med school and it worked out. So that was good. And a fun fact about me is I wanted to be a firefighter before I pursued medicine. So I was doing that and I changed career paths. And then I will popcorn it off to, we'll do Mariana.
Hi, my name is Mariana. I'm also a first year at Kaiser with Jose. I went to Vanderbilt for undergrad, then worked at Northwestern during my gap years, doing some clinical research, and now I ended up here at Kaiser. But when I was at Vandy, I majored in medicine, health, and society in Spanish, and then minored in sociology. And I'm excited to help out and answer any questions for people who are the first in their family to go to medical school or be a physician. So, yeah, excited to be here. And I'll pass it on to Jordan.
What's your hometown?
Yep, sorry, I'm from Northern California, so the Bay Area.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm also really excited to be here. I'm Jordan. I'm from Northern California also. And let's see, I went to Dartmouth for undergrad. I graduated in 2019. And then there I majored in psychology, minored in anthropology, and I did 2 gap years doing research in the Bay Area after that. And now I'm at Kaiser. And my fun fact, or I'll say my favorite food is fruit, probably watermelon and berries. And then I will pass it off to Brandon.
Hi, morning. My name is Brandon. I am a second year medical student at USC from the Bay Area, small town called Newark. I started off in community college, wasn't the best student, so just started off right there and ended up transferring to UC Berkeley as a political science major. On the side, I was still interested in medicine, so I was completing some prereqs, graduated in 2019, and then I took 3 gap years just to finish my prereqs so I can get some experiences, and now I'm here as a med student. I'll popcorn it over to Melissa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa. I'm currently a 4th year medical student at USC. Hi, Brandon. I am from Southern California, Ventura County, to be a little bit more specific. I went to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., majored in psychology and minored in art, and I graduated in 2018. I took a couple gap years. I worked a couple jobs, took the MCAT, and then started medical school in 2020. I will be going into psychiatry. Very excited about that. So if you have any questions about psychiatry or overcoming a low GPA when you apply as a pre-med, when you apply to medical school, being the first in your family, all the things, happy to talk about it. And my fun fact, I really love pasta and just like Madeline. So yeah. Sorry, I had one job. I will popcorn it to Nishida.
I am not a medical student. I'm here as part of the pre-med TC team, but I'll popcorn it off to Shannon.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. My name is Shannon. I'm a 4th year at Kaiser. I grew up in the suburbs of Atlanta. For undergrad, I went to Cornell in New York. I majored in biology and society and graduated in 2019. I'm currently applying to ophthalmology, so if you ever have an interest in the eyes, I'd love to talk about it. My favorite food is pomegranate, so I'm really excited. It's pomegranate season, so I just picked up a big pack from Costco.
And aren't you going to be part of the first graduating class?
Yes. I am I'm the first class for Kaiser, so I've been through it all. I've been the guinea pig, and now we're finally graduating. I will popcorn it to Alex.
Hi, everyone. So I started my career at Pasadena City College. I was born and raised in Pasadena. I've been here all my life. Like Jose, after I went to community college, I transferred to USC. But like Jose, I kind of was bouncing around. I was interested in medicine, but I was also interested in public health. So I decided to go back to USC and get my MPH. And I spent a few years working as an epidemiology analyst for LA County Department of Public Health. I really enjoyed it, but I still wanted that clinical experience. And so I applied to medical school, and I'm now a first year at USC Keck. I will popcorn it to Tommy.
Hi, my name is Tamaya. Many people call me Tommy. I'm from Houston, Texas,
And I started out at University of Houston and then transferred to University of Texas at Austin, where I got my degree in English. After that, I didn't feel like I was really ready for medical school, but I still wanted to do more schooling and more research. So I decided to apply to grad school, where I got a master's of biomedical sciences in cancer biology at UT MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. Now I am a first year medical student at Keck School of Medicine. I'm also first generation. And fun fact about me is I like to change my hair color, trying to go blonder.
I tried to perm, but it doesn't work.
Perms they can be rough.
I know. Yeah. Perm and braid just don't work with my hair. Alrighty. And I think this is everyone. Oh, I think Sangeet is still. Yes.
All right. My name is Sanjay Park. I'm the third year medical student at Mount Sinai in New York. So I was born and raised in South Korea. I went to College of Eastern Utah when I was 19 as an international student. So my plan was to get a degree and go back to Korea, but I ended up studying more. So I got a nursing degree from College of Eastern Utah, but while I was in the school, Utah State bought my school. So my final degree, my diploma says University of Utah Eastern. So the school was in a really small rural mining town in Utah. So if you're interested in talking about how to get a medical school or have a background of graduating from a school in a rural farm or mining town, I can help you out with that. And also, I speak English as a second language. So if you have a question about how to study for cars, especially for the MCAT, I struggled a lot. I can help you out with as well. Anyways, yeah, so after I graduating from Utah State, I joined the US Army. I served in Hawaii for 4 years. And after that, I wanted to go to medical school. I went to New York City to go to Hunter College, got a biology degree, and now I'm at Mount Sinai. So if you are interested in talking about the non-traditional or a gap year experience, talking about stuff like that, I can help you out with as well. Fun fact about me, when I was in Hawaii, President Obama was president at the time, and then he came to Hawaii every year for vacation. And at the time, Secret Service needed some help when guarding President Obama and his family while they were hanging out at the beach. So I volunteered and I guarded President Obama and his family while they were hanging out at the beach with the Secret Service. So that was pretty cool.
And you stopped all the bullets and threats, right?
Yes.
All right. Mindy, do you want to go with the first question?
Sure. So our first question is, what helped you decide you wanted to become a physician and not a PA, NP, or nurse?
I think I can start it off because I was a nurse and then I was also medic in the Army. So I chose nursing because I loved working in a clinic environment and helping out the people who are in need, times of need, and just like dealing with the medication and procedural hands-on stuff. I really don't like the office setting where I sit down and like just work at a computer all day. I didn't like that. I mean, I enjoyed the field of nursing, but in terms of helping out my patients, which was my ultimate goal, I was somewhat limited. I just followed doctor's orders. The doctors examine the patient and they put the orders, the medications or the dress changing or things like that are needed for the patient, and I get to do it. But I always felt like I could do more as a nurse. I could assess the patient and come up with the medication that the patient needs. And if the patient doesn't respond to certain medication, I can be proactive, changing, giving the patient new medication or put a different consult. I wanted to do that as a nurse, but as a nurse, I couldn't do that. I could suggest the doctors, but ultimately the decision fell on the doctors. So I didn't like that limitation, and I felt like I could do more, and I want to do more. So that's why in the midst of working, have a great career as a nurse, but I wanted to go to medical school. So that's my story.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Sure, I can add to that. I think additionally, like with what Sanjay mentioned about like having that kind of like decision making and leadership role in the clinic, like a big part of what drew me into medicine is also like the advocacy and like the responsibility slash leadership you have within a community as well. And so that was something that I felt like as a physician, I would have a little bit more like I would have the education to kind of like back the, you know, the responsibility and the like the leadership role. But that's something that also drew me to becoming a physician versus a nurse or PA, was kind of that not only the like clinical role, but also like the leadership in your community as well, and the advocacy that the stronger advocacy that you might have just from having like an MD, DO, etc.
All right. Anyone else have anything else they want to add? Okay. We'll move on to.
Before we get started, we just have one more person that showed up late, because he was on round. So, George, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm George. I did my undergraduate schooling at USC. Kind of thought I wanted to stay there. Ended up at Cornell, New York for med school. In my research year, I did a lot of advocacy work. I heard a lot of people talking about, you know, the power of it. So that's something that I was kind of drawn to doing. And then fun fact, I grew up in Hawaii. And Jubin's gonna make me say that my sister's a golfer, so there it is, Jubin, I said it.
Yeah, but she's just not a golfer. You got to like go into more detail.
I'll let you do that one.
No, his sister just won the LPGA tournament, so if you ever want to like go hustle someone, take her. Although she's on a lot of covers of magazines, so I guess you can't. But anyway, sorry. All right, Nishid, did you want to ask that next question?
Yeah. Our next question is, should cost be a factor for me to choose a medical school?
I can start on this one. I know we have a lot of people at Kaiser, so you lucky ducks are tuition free. But for people, my medical school has a pretty high tuition, and what all my students, you know, I have a lot of I come from a middle class background. A lot of my friends come from lower income backgrounds, and it is very doable. You get loans, and I think we have a lot of videos on financial being able to afford medical school and being able to get financial aid and the processes for that. So there are definitely resources out there. Also, when you're applying to medical school, if cost is an issue, there's you're able to apply for a program that will give you free MCAT, free resources, and then allow you to apply to, I believe it's 10 schools without paying any fees. So there's definitely ways to work around that. Also, medical schools, when you're submitting your secondaries, a lot of times, if you let them know that you're on that program, then they're able to waive the secondary fee as well. So there are resources out there. Medical school is definitely expensive, and but everyone's taking out loans, and when you're an attending, you will be able to pay those loans back. There's also ways to get your loans forgiven if you spend time working in federally qualified health centers. So it's definitely an issue. It's a problem, but there's so many resources and ways to go around that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think 4 years is a long time, and I think you should be happy with where you are for 4 years. So, I mean, I think you should choose medical school based on your value. So if you value being close to your family and friends, you value research, or if you value type of city you want to live in, or type of environment you want to be in, you should choose the school regardless of the cost. Yeah, just like Melanie said, you know, they have a great financial packet, and the loan system is really good. And especially with the new safe student loan system, you're not going to be accruing interest while you're in residency, just paying based on your residency salary, which is not a lot. So yeah, I would say just choose a medical school based on your value, not based on just the cost by itself.
I would like to add, even though at Kaiser we do have free tuition, I would like to add when I was applying, there are many medical schools that do give scholarships. They give grants for minority students. They also give it for certain academic accolades. There are also medical schools that do give free tuition based on your financial need. I know Cornell is one of them, where if you kind of meet a certain income requirement, then that makes you eligible for free tuition. I think George is better able to speak on that since I don't go to Cornell. But and also, if you do have multiple acceptances to medical school, you can leverage your financial aid package to get a higher financial aid package based on your acceptances. So there are other options instead of totally relying on loans.
Yeah, just to kind of talk about that. Thanks, Shannon. I think my first year, Cornell decided to do this whole debt-free thing, and I think if you're interested in, a lot of these programs, there's like a New York trend where those schools are trying to do more of that kind of work. I think it's also catching on to places like UCLA, and people who realize that medical school shouldn't put you into debt. So I think that's something you can kind of consider when you're building that list. When you do get to the interview, there's almost always every school having a certain session with their financial department, talking about these are the kinds of loans people are taking, this is the tuition, these are the different kinds of costs of attendance outside of tuition that you have to consider. And I think you can just ask them, when you're there, like, what does a typical person, what does their loan plan look like? How many loans are they taking? Where are these loans coming from? And I think that also helps you make a better informed decision as to, okay, I really like this place. Is this a place that I'm willing to pay this much to go to? And in my experience, that information has been pretty well made accessible. So.
Anyone else?
Anyone else wants to add to that?
I'll just piggyback off of what Sanjay said. I think like making a priorities list can be really helpful in deciding what med school you want to go to, and cost is just one of the factors on the list, but I think that will help you determine like how much you should factor in all of the things that everyone has talked about here, because it is a really important thing. But I also agree that like you should be happy, you should go where things interest you, and so just kind of sit down like when you're applying or maybe after you've gotten in and make that priorities list and then kind of figure it out from there.
Okay, great. Good advice. Could you talk about how to compensate for a lower GPA or MCAT? I'm sure there are a lot of ideas on this.
I could start. This was a big I guess my GPA was the biggest, I'd say, like red flag on my application. It was a big concern for me when I was applying, and a lot of my deans at my school were not supportive of my application because of my lower GPA, unfortunately. And so I kind of had to navigate that space on my own. And what I found to be helpful was making sure that I did well on the MCAT. I wasn't like 90th percentile, but I got close to the national average. And that I think is enough to show that academically you're able to perform and do well. And I think that's all that really matters. Med schools want to see that you will be able to handle the academic rigor of medical school. And just because you didn't do so well in your pre-med classes does not mean at all that you won't do well in medical school. I can tell you that medical school has been a lot more interesting, and it's, you find your study habits. And I think being a pre-med is very different than being a medical student. So I wouldn't worry too much about, if you would be able to perform well, but do realize that doing well on the MCAT will help you balance out a lower GPA, and then having other strong aspects of your application, including a strong personal statement with a good narrative of why you want to be a doctor, and supporting extracurriculars and strong letters of recommendation. All of those really go into creating a whole picture of why you want to be a doctor. And I think having a low GPA is just one aspect of the application. And I think medical schools now are realizing that it's not the only aspect of applicants, and really there are more important things that they look at now. And so really focus on strengthening everything else on your application, so that that's the one thing that they look at and say, okay, maybe, gives them pause, but they see everything else and they see that you're a stellar student. And I think that'll, get you where you want to be.
Yeah, I would like to build up what Melissa said. I personally didn't have the highest GPA, and my MCAT also was not the greatest one. I remember when I was looking at the MSAR, for those who don't know, MSAR is like a little catalog of schools, and it shows you every school's average GPA, MCAT, like their, what is it, 25th, 75th percentile, their 90th and 10th percentile. So you can kind of see the ranges of who gets accepted. And I remember I was comparing my GPA and my MCAT to all these schools, and they were all on the lower side. USC specifically, I remember my MCAT didn't even hit the 10th percentile, and that kind of freaked me out. And I thought, man, I can't really apply to these schools. I would say don't let those numbers really prevent you from wanting to apply to these schools, because you'd be surprised what schools will take interest in you, especially you have those extracurricular experiences that really match the mission to the school. For USC specifically, we have a huge Hispanic population, a huge amount of patients that only speak Spanish. So I had a lot of experiences with, as a medical interpreter, working with Hispanic patients, working as a health advocate, and that really matched the mission for the school. So even though I had a lower GPA, my application was really well tailored for that school. And looking back, when I applied really based off of where's my GPA, where's my MCAT at? But in hindsight, it probably would have been better to apply based off of my application. What are my experiences, and which schools are really well suited to those experiences? Because I found that a lot of these schools really overlooked my lower GPA, my lower MCAT, because of my experiences.
I can also add a little bit to what has been said so far. I think another option would be to do a post-bac program if you have the means to do so. That's what I did, because I struggled a lot in undergrad. I kind of got in my own way in the sense that I didn't ask for help. I was first gen. I thought I had to figure it out on my own. So that ended up with me and graduating with a subpar GPA. So on top of the extracurriculars that I had trying to build up my application, I did a post-bac program. And through that, I felt like I was given a second chance to demonstrate that I am capable to perform academically. And that also opened the door for me to get additional letters of recommendation. And also, I got lucky in the sense that I was able to get some more research experience through that program, through the institution. So if you have the means to do so, I would say that on top of extracurriculars, you could also explore post-bac program options. And I think that would also be helpful.
I second what Brandon said. Don't get intimidated by, the average applicant matriculants, MCAT score, and things like that. Like I said in the introduction, I struggled a lot with the cars, especially because I started speaking English when I was 19. So before that, I couldn't even say hi, hello in English. I just took some grammar classes back in Korea. But yeah, I couldn't really, I just learned English when I was 19. So I struggled a lot with the cars, and my car score was really low. It's too embarrassing to say what my score was. And I read some, articles there are a number of schools just automatically don't accept students who has car score below this. And you know what? I was like, I'm going to get my shot. And then I applied to those schools, and I have a lot of interview invites and actually got acceptance offers. And I think that some of the schools consider your backgrounds. I emphasize on my application, hey, I came here when I was 19. I started speaking English when I was 19 and things like that. So they really, schools do review your application holistically. So if you're lacking in one part, GPA, or your MCAT, there's one area that you're lacking, just like explain why, or just like other panelists said, just try to compensate by having extracurricular activities. And I, make sure I emphasize I came here when I was 19, and I try to articulate myself and communicate very well during the interviews. That way they're like, oh, he can actually, I can actually communicate with this student and will make a great position. So there are many ways you can let the schools and admission committees know that, there is giving them reason to review your application holistically.
All right. Well, anyone else want to add anything before I ask the next question? Okay. Our next question is, what advice do you have for first generation students?
I can
Oh, you can go. You can go.
Okay. One thing I would say is, like, I know it's incredibly hard, especially just like with our culture, but is to really not compare yourself, because especially as a first generation student, you like, it's not even just like about what you have done to get to where you're at. Like for other people who are not first generation, it's also about what their parents have done to get to them to like the place they're at, and what their grandparents and etc. So like, I think you realize this more and more as you like go on this path. I think initially it seems like, you get your like bachelor's, you take your MCAT, you go to med school, you get into residency. It seems like a really like, strict pathway, but actually like the details of it are like really change from person to person. And so even though it may be good to like know like, obviously it's good to know like what you need to do in order to get to where you want to be. I think when you're living it day to day, and even like month to month, etc., like your actual path might not be exactly what you've seen for other people or seen in the media or anything like that. And so it's really important to like just like be in tune with like what it is you want to accomplish, and what type of learner you are, and what kind of student you are, and what type of professional you are, and what kind of like people you connect with in order to like have like good mentorships or good support systems while in school, and to listen to that and make as the moves that feel right for you in your journey.
Yeah, I could also add on to that. Like, highly want to emphasize, don't compare yourself to other people. You're on your own journey, you're on your own timeline. And, I would say give yourself grace. You're the first one doing this. It's a lot. It's very daunting. It's arguably one of the hardest career paths to get into. So I would say give yourself grace. Maybe it takes longer for you to get it done. Personally, it took me, I think, 12 years from when I graduated high school to starting medical school, because I, had to figure it out. I was first gen. And one thing I would say that if I could go back and give myself, a first gen student, advice would be to reach out to others. Don't feel like you're alone. It might feel alone because you're first gen and maybe nobody in your family understands what you're going through. But this day and age, there's social media. I'm sure there's a lot of people on this panel that would be happy to speak further on this or mentor you. But reach out and get help from people who've done it, who are first gen, who really empathize with your struggle. And I can assure you there's a lot of people that are willing and able and happy to help. So don't feel like you're alone.
Just to quickly follow up on this question, as first generation students, how did you involve your family in your medical school journey?
I feel like there were some difficult conversations that needed to be had with my family personally. Not because they were against what I was doing. It's just that they didn't understand that I couldn't go to certain family events because I had an exam coming up or I had interviews or whatever. So it just took some time to like really sit down with them and walk them through why I was so unavailable at times or like why I couldn't make certain events. But yeah, in terms of involving them, I feel like I just had to just ask them as well for some grace for their understanding. And, you know, I promised them it would be worth it. And, you know, white coat ceremony came around and they were like over the moon. So that's how I figured I would involve them. But I'm sure there's others who can speak on that as well.
Yeah, same. I think with my family, I like my education and like my sister's education was always a really big priority. So it wasn't like a huge leap to kind of like just prioritize that within the family as well. But also at some point I realized that I think I need to be a little bit more patient with I think sometimes at school, I don't know, I think even just going as far as we have in school, I just even started like talking faster. And I think I realized at some point that I needed to kind of like, in order to like kind of include like my parents along with like this journey, sometimes I just need to like slow down and explain to them like, I think like my mom still calls the white coat ceremony a white jacket ceremony. So like just to explain to them like, this is what it was like shadowing, and this is what this is like what my research is, and I think it even helped me like be able to communicate it like with people outside in general of like science and medicine. So one thing I think that I learned along this road has been like to have a little bit more patience and to kind of like slow down like how I'm talking about this process with my parents, especially, and always like, with my friends and my peers, we're all in this together. So it's easier to just like, start speaking in our like little medical student jargon and abbreviations and things like that. But with my parents, I do slow it down.
For me, oh, okay, I'll be quick. For me, so when I got out of the army, I was 27 and I was already a nurse. So when I told them I'm gonna start medical school, I'm gonna go back to undergrad and get a biology and try medical school. So that's gonna be like 8 years of school. But they kind of wanted me to go with the nursing practitioner route because that was just 2 years of more schooling, and then I'll be starting career as a nurse practitioner, which is pretty good career in terms of salary and money wise. But they didn't understand why I was going back to undergrad, taking just like general education courses, biology 1 to chemistry and stuff like that. But even if I didn't have their blessing, I just did it. It was my life. And then going to medical school and becoming a physician was my dream at that point. So I kind of did it without their blessings. But one thing that I realized that as I was achieving and hitting the milestone one by one, they were slowly coming around. They were slowly rooting for me, and they were understanding, and they were genuinely happy for my success and my progress. So even don't get frustrated, even if you don't have their blessings, even if you think that they don't understand what you're doing, just do your thing, study hard, go forward, and your family will come around, and they'll, yeah, just like other panelists said, the white coat ceremony, and they see you're hitting milestones and progressing towards becoming physician, poster presentation, white coat ceremony, your first clinical rotation in scrubs and things like that, then they will be really proud of you. So don't get frustrated, even if you your family don't have support you right now.
I think too, one thing that I didn't realize was exactly how difficult medical school would be as you go through like the clinical rotations and beyond. You start to see, it's not just physically exhausting, but mentally exhausting. And so for me, I think family was just having that community to kind of bounce back to. There were many nights that, I admit that I would come crying, and it's just a part of the experience. You work hard, you have to learn a lot, and you're expected to be on top of your A game every day and then come home and study even more. It didn't end. And having people that I could kind of dissociate with for a day and be like, I just want to talk about this. I'm so tired. And, and having them being able to kind of get me through it. I think that was really important in terms of, even though my family didn't know much about medicine, they were always there to kind of catch me when things got tough. And so I think that's kind of, in order to be your best self, you need people behind you who support you. And that's kind of what my family has been able to do.
Does any other first gen person want to add to this? This is one follow-up question I want to ask is some of you have been in a lot of rooms that you were probably the only one who looked like you in those rooms, and how did you navigate that and manage that? And this is both for like undergraduate.
I struggle a lot with imposter syndrome, always have, and I think I always will. But for me, the biggest thing that's helped me is really think about, why am I having these thoughts and what evidence do I have for them? And the future psychiatrist in me and like future therapist in me is like, okay, well, I've done well in my exams, I do well in my rotations, I get good feedback. Why do I still feel like I'm not good enough to be here, or I'm not smart enough to be here? And I think for me, it's really been a lot about reflection and looking back at how far I've come and how far, I've been able to achieve things and in my life, and look at that evidence to support to support my journey and really just negate those feelings of imposter syndrome that I have. So I think that's been helpful for me.
I can chime in here. I will say for most of my clinical sites at Kaiser, I was the only Black medical student like in the whole hospital. So I was very visible. Everyone always recognized me. And this was still during COVID, mask. And so I wouldn't always recognize everyone back because I've only ever seen people with masks on. So that was definitely an interesting spotlight, because I think in general, which I think people that like referenced, is as a medical student, you're always kind of expected to be bringing your A game. And for me, on how I've kind of handled these spaces, I would say I'm a pretty observant person. So I do kind of like to lay back and observe what's going on and to kind of see like what the team is like, kind of what their rapport is like, or how they like to handle things, and kind of similarly do something like that. Because as a medical student, you go through different rotations every 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks. At Kaiser, it's like for a year. So it's really best to kind of learn the environment that you're in. And that's just kind of how you have to be throughout all of medical school, and also probably residency as well.
Right. Does anyone have anything else to add? Right. As a pre-med student, does the school we attend for our bachelor's matter?
I can start us off real quickly. I mean, I think at medical school, my classmates come from so many different schools, so many different places. And I think it doesn't matter so much where you go, but what you do with it. If you go to a great school, but you're not involved in any extracurriculars, you're just studying, that's not going to be as important as if you go somewhere where you're able to get involved and where you're doing research, or you're involved in extracurriculars. And I think that was something that I think a lot of times we focus on, especially as community college, where we're transferring to and how that's going to look to medical schools. But in reality, you're so much more than your school. You're more than your grades. You are a person bringing your unique journey, and that's what schools are looking for. So as long as you're happy where you're at, I think, I don't think it really matters so much the name itself.
Yeah, I think the schools that have like the big name recognitions, I think maybe the things that they have going most for them is that generally they might be like, you know, really well established and therefore have like a big alumni network, and you might be like anywhere in the world and you might be able to find, you know, that school there. At the same time, like, you know, I feel like life just gets busier and busier and busier. So like you have to be really, really intentional about, you know, tapping into that alumni network. And like it's great that it's always there, but also if you're not always like a part of that, like I would say that's the biggest like benefit of a school with big name recognition. Like at any school, you can have like amazing connections that could probably even, you know, like I think that actually go further for you in times of need, versus like, you know, a vast network that you might not, you know, tap into, or like in times of need might not be as like supportive or beneficial, if you're not already like so, you know, active in it.
Anyone else have anything they want to add to this?
Yeah, I can add. I have a unique perspective because I am on the admissions committee, and I think in general, I would say that the conversation relating to like GPA and MCAT is kind of the biggest thing, kind of rather than the school. And also about just having a complete application, like showing extracurriculars, because everyone has to do that. It shows that, you know, you're able to juggle multiple things at one time and do them great. And it just really, you know, enforces that your application is more than just grades. It's also like a combination of what you're interested in and the extracurriculars you involve yourself in and things like that.
All right, moving on to our next question. How did you overcome studying for the MCAT, overcoming low scores, or taking it again? And what did you focus on the most? And what advice would you give yourself in what you know?
Guess I can go with this. And studying for the MCAT was a struggle. I was working a full-time job while doing that, which, I mean, if possible, I would recommend against doing that. But also, I know that many of us have to work, like we have to pay the bills, pay rent. So sometimes it's not possible. Were you in that situation? I would say just make sure you give yourself a longer period of time to study, and do give yourself breaks in between just to not burn yourself out. Like I wouldn't do it how I did it, where I would work my 8 to 6, go home, and then study till 1 a.m. every night. Like that's not very sustainable. I would say, like, I ended up doing that because I felt like rushed. I wanted to get it done at a certain time, and it really affected me mentally. I was just drained. So I would say just make sure you take your time with the MCAT, and make sure if you're able to cut back on hours, do try to do that. If not, just make sure you give yourself more time to study for it. I would definitely say it's a marathon, not a sprint. It is a lot of material and it can feel overwhelming, but I mean, it is doable if you just give yourself plenty of time.
Yeah, just going off of that, I took my MCAT between my junior and senior year when I was also doing full-time research during the summer. And I would also agree that although it was probably better than trying to take it during while I was studying for classes, it was absolutely difficult to be doing it while doing like full-time research. And so I would also agree to, if you can cut back when you have the time to prioritize taking the MCAT. The other thing that helped me a lot too was that I had friends who were also taking the MCAT, and we were able to study together and just generally create this supportive environment. Because I mean, as I'm sure we all know, the medical field and medical school and just taking the MCAT, it's the best way to get through it is with support and collaboration. And so that's something that absolutely helped me, was just having that network of friends that were also going through it so we could help each other out.
For me, I think that I told you I didn't really do well with cars, but in the other areas, MCAT, I did it pretty well in my standards. I think that the MCAT prep starts with your undergrad courses. I think I studied really hard in my biology, chemistry, organic chemistry classes, and that became really good, solid foundation for my MCAT prep. So I think that doing your best in undergrad courses, not just trying to get an A in certain courses, just try to like understand the concept you're studying, trying to understand biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, or statistics in a big picture. And that will be a good foundation for your MCAT prep. When you don't have a lot of time, just like other panelists said, they're in the middle of research here, trying to teach yourself again how certain electrons move certain way for organic chemistry. It's going to be a little hard to teach yourself and watch videos again and lectures and stuff like that. So once you understand and have a solid foundation, MCAT prep will be a lot easier. And another advice I have is use resources. I know some of the resources are very expensive. Some of the full-length exams, you have to pay a lot of money. If you ask me, I think that the system is rigged. But unfortunately, try to beat the system. You kind of have to play along. That's the way I see it. So I would say, save up money or ask for help from your family members and try to, there are a lot of free resources out there, but I really I felt that some of the resources I paid for helped me a lot. So, and then those companies put a lot of research and then try to create really valuable content for test prep. So yeah, if you have, so use those resources.
I have a couple of things to add. When I was studying for the MCAT, I was actually like scoring super low, like 498, 40, 487. And I actually sat twice for the MCAT, but I avoided the first one because I was like, oh, this is going to be super bad. And I think the biggest thing for me is I would actually go to the library and Barnes and Noble and read through the different prep books, because I think it's important to find the prep book that you jive with very well, that you're able to read and understand. Like I didn't do well with Kaplan. I didn't do well with like Princeton Review. Like those books just weren't the ones for me. And for the second time that I sat, I actually did the Berkeley Review. It was like very easy for me to read. I actually read all of the books cover to cover. Like I didn't do any prep courses. I was actually nervous because for the first time I prepped, I had already taken all of the double AMC practice exams. So I was nervous about the reliability of taking them again and if I could actually trust those scores. At the end, I was able to trust the scores because I think I took them at least 4 months apart. So I think finding the prep book that really speaks to you and how you learn, and also realizing that the MCAT is also like a test taking exam, because for my classes in college, none of my exams were multiple choice. So I really had to learn how to take a multiple choice exam again.
For me, I'm someone who had to take the MCAT quite a few times. I would always increase a few points after each exam, but it just wasn't the score that I was looking for. And I was working full time during the whole time I was doing these exams. And I would go to school, I would go to work from like 8 to 5, come home like Brandon, work like 6 hours, try to study for 6 hours, and it just wasn't effective at all. So I think there's a big difference between how long you study and how effective you study. And though that was a big lesson I had to learn, and I had to find my own studying strategy for me until eventually I was like, okay, now I understand what the MCAT is all about. Now I know what the question is asking me about. So take your time, read the question, process what the question is asking you, and then now will make the whole process of answering the questions on the MCAT slightly easier.
I think too, one of the things that really overwhelms me with not just the MCAT, but also step 1, step 2 is like feeling there's so much to know and having to keep reviewing every single little detail, every single little topic. Through medical school, what's helped was kind of forcing myself to take practice tests, even though I hated it. looking at those scores, and they will tell you exactly like where you are not good at, and really targeting your weaknesses, because it'll say like, okay, your chemistry is a little on the lower side, your biology was the stronger, and being able to target your weak topics and bring everything up to par. I think that's kind of how I ended up being able to study more efficiently instead of kind of being stressed out about every little thing.
Yeah, I took the MCAT twice. The first time I took it, it was during school, during labs, probably not a great choice. But at that point, I thought I was only going to take one gap year. And so I was like, this is my only time to take it. I have to. And then I decided I could have applied then, but I decided I wanted to wait. So I took it again, like months later. And I think a couple things I learned. The second time I took it, it was during part-time research. So like everyone's been saying, obviously, if you have more time, it's easier to study then. But just don't rush just because you think you have to, or just because you're trying to follow like someone else's timeline. And then I think have a good plan going in. The first time I didn't have a solid plan for what I was going to do for the X amount of weeks. And so I think I kind of got lost in trying to study like all the topics all the time. And so just try and figure out like what you're going to do, lay out a schedule, and then really look through all the resources. I also went through like a good amount of resources before I found what worked for me. And then even now I just took step one, and I have learned like so much about myself in the 3 years of med school that I didn't know then. Like now I would just do practice questions, and I probably wouldn't content review at all because that's not really my style. Like I don't like to read. I learned by just taking the questions and then reviewing those answers. So give yourself grace. You learn over time. Even when you're a fourth year med student, you're going to study probably different than you did in college, during the MCAT, during your first year of med school. So just give yourself grace, have a good plan, and get started. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is get started for me.
I'm just going to add in really quickly too. I feel like everyone really addressed it. There's so many different studying styles, and there's so many different resources out there. And one thing that Pre-Med CC does have a couple of videos about Anki. I know for some people, Anki is a really helpful tool for studying. I did not use it for the MCAT, but now that I'm in medical school, I've become more familiar with Anki. So that might be something that works for people, especially if your schedule is a little more restricted. And then also there are some Pre-Med CC videos by Ken Tao, who is with Med School Coach, going over MCAT study strategies and techniques. So I think, yeah, Jubin has posted those in the chat for everyone. If you are struggling to start studying for the MCAT, that might be worth taking a look at.
Yes, and I don't want to embarrass Madeline, but I will because I know her and she's used to it. But she and another person in our group studied for the MCAT on her own, and they both got like 97 and 98 percentile. So we posted that link on there, but they also put all their content that they used, from like their flashcards to their review practice and all that stuff, and it's free and you could download it and you could start there as well. And so that resource is free and available to you. It's quite a lot. I think on our website, I think it's like almost like 3 gigs of space that it's taken. So it's free and you could download it. So here. But yes, Madeline did excellent on her MCAT. So
Awesome. All right, let's transition a little bit. So we're curious, what factors made you choose the medical school you attend? And can you speak a little bit to the culture of your medical school and if you feel like you found your community?
I'll go first. So I lived in many places in the United States. I lived in Utah. That's where I went to school. And with the military, I was stationed in Texas, Oklahoma, and Hawaii. I was in Hawaii for 4 years, and then I transferred to Hunter College in New York City. Of all the places I lived, I liked Hawaii and New York the most. just because it's a very diverse. I like the city. So my choice was either University of Hawaii or some medical school in New York City. And I got accepted to Mount Sinai. I was really happy. I get to stay. And Mount Sinai is actually like 2 subway stops from my apartment. So I didn't even have to move from my undergrad. So I just like stayed in the same exact apartment. I've been living here for 6 years. I love my neighborhood, my roommates, and amazing. So for me, yeah, the big factor was I wanted to stay in New York City, and I did. And I liked my community at Mount Sinai because it has really good relationship with the faculty members and attendings. So Mount Sinai, especially our school, is in our hospital. So like 12th and 13th floor of Mount Sinai Hospital is medical school. So we can literally just go to the different floor and there are patients and there are doctors. So it's like combined together. So if we want to visit a faculty member, if they have a question or mentor, research buildings across the street, which is connected by Sky Bridge. So everything was just like together. We were able to just find mentors, research opportunities, and questions we can just see face to face with the faculty members and attendings. So I like the fact that we are very diverse and in a way very compact in terms of seeing people in person. So I mean, I'm really enjoying the patient population as well, very diverse in terms of ethnicity, in terms of socioeconomic status. So I've been really enjoying my school and studying in New York City.
Yeah, I guess I could say I went to USC. For me, I'm from the Bay Area, and being closer to family and having a support system close-ish by was pretty important to me. So, I mean, USC is only like an hour flight from the Bay, so I felt like I was still once a month, but I still want to go see family. I could just quickly fly up, and it wouldn't be any big deal. So for me, location was a big factor. Also, growing up in California and then going to second looks in the Midwest and seeing snow in April, I was like, I think I'm gonna stay in California. But other than that, the big thing that drew me to USC was the patient population that school works with. We have LA General Hospital, which is a county hospital, so we take a lot of uninsured patients, a lot of low income patients, and that was the future population that I wanted to work with. So I felt like that was a very good match for me. Big thing for me too that I think people should consider when they go to second looks is the culture. Like, what's the vibe of the medical school? And what I found for USC compared to like the other ones I visited was like the culture was more relaxed with the medical students. Like it's like I would say a little more chill, where I like to go out, they like to socialize, which I really liked. So I felt like that was a good match for me, and I think it was perfect for me long term. Like, or just a long time, you want to make sure it's a med school that you're a good fit for. So yeah.
And anyone else that wants to add to that?
Yeah, I can talk about Kaiser, and the other 3 on here if you guys want to add to this. I think for me, it was actually really hard to decide what school to choose. I just contemplate over decisions for so long, so it was really hard. I think it really came down to like Kaiser versus where I went to undergrad, and which is on the East Coast, and I loved it over there. But Kaiser's new, and it had it had a lot more opportunity for like starting things, leading things, making changes in the curriculum. And then LA is also obviously a lot more diverse than New Hampshire. And so I had already like been there for 4 years. I kind of knew what the patient population looked like. And LA was more of what I had in mind of the patients I wanted to see in medical school. And then I don't know if this was a huge factor at the time, but it's been incredibly nice being close to family. Like Brandon said, my family's in Northern California, and so I am able to see them a lot more than I did in undergrad. In med school, is harder than undergrad. So it's nice to have that support. I can go see my animals, which is like my favorite thing to do. So I think those were kind of the factors. I tried to eliminate cost from the choice as much as I could when I wanted to compare like that priorities list I was talking about. Obviously, it's always, you're not going to like forget that it's a free school. And so it is an incredible benefit. But there are a lot of reasons that I chose Kaiser other than cost. Yeah.
I would say there's multiple reasons why I picked Kaiser. Because when I was choosing a medical school that I wanted to go to, it was more about how I thought that medical school would train me into the physician that I wanted to be. Because when you're applying, it's all about mission alignment. And that's true because the medical schools will tell you what their mission is, what their values are, and it's important to kind of match that. So for me, for the type of physician that I envisioned myself to be, like I really wanted to work in the community. I was really about advocacy. So it was important that the medical school that I attended would have aspects of their curriculum and how they involved themselves in the community that would emulate how I wanted to practice. And I found that at Kaiser.
I can say that for like choosing USC or Keck, I felt like it was more of like a where my heart was at. I from Texas, so that's like a completely different application process, and like I had the option to go to school in Texas, and it felt like the logical thing, and I would be closer to my family and like all these different things. But in the end, like I just I just like my heart was at USC. Like I think I wanted kind of the adventure of being away from home. And also there's a lot of things that just with like some of my interests like in the arts, and the patient population at like LA General is a like astounding place to learn. West Coast is best coast. So yeah. In the end, I kind of like made a decision based off of more of like where my heart was at, and also like communicated with like admissions about like cost and things like that, like how someone mentioned before, like how you can leverage and negotiate like scholarships. That was another thing that kind of like confirmed my decision. But yeah.
So I'm also born in California, and then I'm now in Rochester, so I'm in New York State. And for me, part of the decision for that was, as we've mentioned before, when I was making my school list, I was looking for a school that matched up with my values. I didn't mention this before, but I minored in society and genetics at UCLA, so I've always been extremely interested in health humanities. So that was something that was really important to me. And Rochester has their curriculum is based around the biopsychosocial model of health. So we really, I was really drawn to being able to explore health humanities and in a deeper way, and to have that more integrated into my curriculum. So that was a huge draw for me. And then also, although I was born and raised in the West Coast, my family actually doesn't live in California anymore. They had all kind of scattered a bit. So when I was making my decision if I wanted to stay in California or if I wanted to branch out, I decided that this was the last chance in my life, it felt like, where I could really go explore somewhere completely new and not have roots starting to take hold. I know residency will again probably be another branching point, but for me, it seemed like a good chance to be able to explore something new and be somewhere different. And although it is difficult being away from my family, I also knew that that would be inevitable, seeing how they're all scattered everywhere. So I think finding a school that has, that you look at the curriculum and you think, does this really align with what I'm looking for and what I want to be woven throughout my education, is important. And I liked how Tommy said, you follow your heart. And I think when we're making those decisions, a lot of us felt that you just feel that thread where you're being pulled.
I also would just give the advice that when you're thinking about the schools that you're applying to or deciding where to go after you get accepted, if you have an opportunity to talk to the current students that are there just to see if you'd be able to fit into that community and get along with them, just because those are people that you'll be spending the next 4 years with. For me, when I was interviewing at Kaiser and then when I went to Second Look Weekend, the student panels or the current students I talked to and other accepted applicants, they were all so kind and people that I could truly consider becoming close friends with over the 4 years. And so I think that's also important, just because, at least especially with Kaiser being a 50-person class, you're going to be very close with your classmates. So that was something that was important to me as well.
Oh, can I say one thing real quick? I forgot to say, at Mount Sinai, all the exams are pass or fail. So that gives a lot of students, it's like a very supportive environment. Like, we have no curving or anything. There's no grade. You pass, you pass. So in the pre-clinical year and then clinic year as well. So it's or pass or fail. And I know some schools have limited spots for honors. We don't. Like, everybody does. Everybody can get honors and things like that. So that really changes the school environment. Some schools compete with each other for honor spots and some sort of like grades. But at Mount Sinai, everybody pass exam, and then you have to go with the like research opportunities and stuff like that. So it really helped me and other students create this supportive environment, and we all enjoy that.
Anyone have anything else they want to add? All right. Our next question is, what kinds of meaningful experiences or opportunities did you pursue during undergrad or during your gap year?
I can start. I was a free clinic volunteer for about 10 years, and that was a big part of my reasoning in wanting to go to medical school, specifically to serve underserved communities and Spanish-speaking communities. So that was probably the biggest highlight in my application overall. It was a big part of my personal statement and my extracurricular activities. It was a way that I was able to get a lot of shadowing as well, and I ended up working for them after college, helping them fundraising and capital campaign work. So it was a big part of my journey and career in getting into medical school, and it was a great way to meet physicians and meet other medical students who are also volunteering there. So definitely consider if you need some clinical experience or shadowing experience to go and search for any free clinics in your area. They often need a lot of help and support, and so it's a great way to help them and also find ways to connect with others.
Yeah, just going off of that, I completely agree with Melissa. I also worked as a Spanish interpreter at a medical student-run free clinic that was in my undergraduate town. And it was a great opportunity not only to work with those underserved populations, but also just to get a sense of what it is like to be a medical student and how that process is of learning and then reporting to the attendings and just that collaborative environment. And it was something that I was extremely passionate about. And I think that came through in both my application and interviews. It was something that I love to talk about. And so just having something that you're passionate about and is easy to speak to was, so I think something that helps stand out.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that too. I was also a Spanish medical interpreter and went to free clinics around San Francisco and was really able to just get really close to the patients. We do health screenings like twice a week and meet many of the same patients, so you were able to build that rapport. And it was something I really enjoyed doing. And because it was something I was passionate about and cared about, I felt like that really shined in the application. So, I mean, whatever you do, whether it's like an ENT, interpreter, MA, I would say just make sure it's something that you like to do and you look forward to doing when it's like time for your shift, because that will really carry through in your writing. I would also add, in addition to like your medical extracurriculars, which of course are important, make sure you have fun, like have some fun extracurriculars to do. In undergrad, I was part of the snowboard team at Cal, and I would talk about that in my application. That's all I talked about in my interviews. Like that's all they bring up. So it's a good conversation starter. So make sure you have some fun stuff in there too.
Yeah, I played volleyball in college, and then I got multiple concussions, and so that got me interested in concussion research. And I started to pursue that at Dartmouth, and then in my gap years, I did 2 years of concussion research at Stanford, and that was what I was really passionate about. And like I would just emphasize what everyone else has said, like please do the activities that you're passionate about and that interest you. Don't do something just because you think, this is what I need to do to check off a box. Med schools can see when you're checking off a box, and it really shines in your interviews if you like talking about what you did, you're really interested in it, whether you want to continue doing it or not, like that you did it because you were passionate about it and you really wanted to create change in whatever you were doing.
Anyone else want to add?
I'm just going to add in really quickly. As we've spoken about, having clinical experiences and showing that you've been in a healthcare profession setting is so important for medical school, but then also finding your passion and finding what really drives you is really what's going to be what sets your application apart. I personally, I got involved with pre-med CC right after I graduated before my 2 gap years because it was something that I was drawn to, and it's something that is a part of my application. So I think finding different volunteer opportunities that may not be medical, they may be outside, separate from that. I think it's really important just to be true to yourself and show who you are. And so I would just say that don't always limit look outside of the box and don't limit yourself just to, oh, well, this isn't going to get me into med school or this doesn't seem applicable. Like it's good to have an open mind and really what you're passionate about is what's going to shine through.
Awesome. So what has been your most challenging and favorite part of medical school? This should be a fun one.
I can start this one. So I think the most challenging part for me as a first year has been the volume of information that we have to learn. I always heard stories with like, oh, it's like drinking from a fire hose or some sort of analogy like that. And I didn't really know what that meant literally until I got to med school. So I would say that has been the most challenging part. And also the fact that life continues to happen, even though you're in med school, for better or for worse. So like people are still going to have birthdays. People are still going to have like celebrations. And you just have to like find a time management strategy that works for you so you can be involved in that as much as possible. There's obviously some sacrifices that need to be made, but that for me has been the most challenging part. And also it's been the most fun part too, because first, like I don't have to do another cars passage again, so that's cool. And it's actually cool to learn like medicine now. So like it is a lot, but it's also very fun and like making connections with different things that happen in our bodies and kind of seeing it in real life, going to clinic and seeing some things that we learn, putting it all into practice has been really fun. And also like I feel like our class or like my class, like our first years we're pretty tight knit. I think Mariana would concur with that. And it's just really cool learning from their diverse lived experiences and like just mingling with them and just being humbled by the incredible people that I'm around every day.
Yeah, I have to really agree with that. I think the most challenging part, I mean, there's been challenging parts up and down throughout the whole thing, but starting out like about where you're at, Jose, maybe a little before like when you guys were in fundamentals, but just that like initial volume of information, you haven't taken your first test yet, you're really nervous, what's it going to be like, you're trying to get your footing, like being in a new place. I think that was all a really challenging time. And then, life is still happening. So like, unfortunately having a funeral, like around that same time. So everything was just happening at once. I think giving yourself grace as much as you can. And I've learned that more and more as I get older and as I go through my education. It's really hard, but just try your best. Don't compare to what other people are doing. Like we've said, everyone's on their own journey. I think the most like rewarding part for me is just seeing myself grow throughout this experience. Like, you know, getting to close for the first time in the OR, getting to do like your first procedure, or when you see your first patient in clinic, and seeing how like there was a time when you were nervous about everything, or like there were things that you couldn't do, and now you can do those things and start to picture like how you're going to be as a physician. I think that has been really exciting.
The one thing I struggled most at the beginning of the medical school is before medical school, I was pretty good at making everything perfect. You know, I was ex-military, so everything has to be perfect in any way possible. You know, being on time and like getting everything I could do to achieve something and accomplish mission and things like that. So undergrad, you know, I was stressed out a lot, but I think that attitude kind of helped me prepare well for medical school, although my mental health wasn't that great. But in medical school, just like other panelists said, there are a lot of information for you to master and to memorize, and nobody in medical school will be able to memorize everything that they're asked of. And then people who used to get straight A's will not get straight A's in medical school, that's for sure. And for me, I struggled a lot. Even if the Mount Sinai is a pass or fail in most of their exams, I still look at my score and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm terrible at this. So at first I struggled a lot and was taking my mental health down. But as the medical school progressed, like I kind of accepted the fact that like, okay, well, I'm good enough, and then move on. And then things got better progressively, but it just embracing the fact that like I'm good enough and moving on was the hardest part, I think, has been. But once I accepted that, and then I get, I'm in clinical rotation right now, clerkship rotation, and sometimes I get evaluation. It's like, oh, he needs to improve on this. I'm like, okay. And then I move on. Before I would have been like, oh my gosh, like what have I done? I need to talk to, get feedback. But I'm like, okay, well, that's what it is. And I do better next time. And I just move on. So
I think as an MS1, just in the middle of preclinical years, and just it feels like all I want to do is study, 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 because there's so much information and there's so much. It really is like drinking from a fire hose. I'd heard that and I didn't. It's not until you really experience it that you realize like, wow, this really is just an incredible amount of information. So there's a tendency to just want to study constantly to try to keep up with it. And I've really been learning how to set time aside for myself. I'm engaged and I have my partner here, and to set time to be together and to come and do, this presentation, and just really find time to relax, because that's such an important part of it. It's easy to get burnt out. It's just, there's an overwhelming amount of information, and it's nice to be able to actually step back from that sometimes. And it's necessary to step back and give yourself a break and do things that you love and find what you really enjoy and what sets your heart back at peace. So that's been tough to learn, but I think it's something to work on.
Such good advice. Anyone else want to add to that? We are curious, could somebody walk us through a typical week in the life of a medical student? Like, how many hours a week do you study? Do you have best practices for studying as a med student?
I can start.
No, you can go, because I'm just going to say as a fourth year, I don't really study that much. So I'm not really qualified to answer this question anymore.
Guys, fourth year is the best. After ERES submitted and you still getting interviews, I heard it's pretty good place to be. But I can talk about my preclinical year and clinical year. I think like it really depends what block you're in. medical school education is not traditional in a sense where you have a semester and you have a midterm final. It's like, I know each school has different program, but pretty much you have 2-3 weeks of a certain system and you take an exam and then you learn new system and then you take an exam and then you move into the new system. So it really depends on each system, each block, if you're in preclinical year and clinical year. So in that sense, it is really important for you to adapt as quickly as possible because anatomy is a pure memorization. You have dissection, you have like cadaver, you work with a cadaver all day and then you have to go home and start memorizing. It's a pure memorization. And then you're going to move on to some sort of physiology class. You're learning about the nephrology and the kidney system, where there's a lot of formula and calculation, numbers. You need to memorize at the same time, be able to like calculate some things. So as you go through each system, like the way you study, the amount of you study sitting down, the amount of you study while like dissecting cadaver, the amount of studying, solving some physiology or some math equation, going to be different. So, and obviously the time you study is different. Each person, everybody has different studying style. By now, I'm pretty sure a lot of you heard about Anki. So some students love doing Anki. They just go to Central Park or sit at a cafe, Starbucks, and just like do Anki all day. Some students prefer reading some materials and they go to library and read through. Some students love studying at night, so they study at night and don't go to even classes. Mount Sinai, classes are optional, they're recorded, so they don't even go to classes. So they study all night, go to sleep 8 in the morning, wake up 2, 3, and then they just repeat, don't go to classes. Some students prefer going to classes, pretty much like 9 to 4, sit in class, interact with the professors, ask questions, and they go home, they study. So it really depends on what works for you. And I think that what really matters is like finding your style and what works and what doesn't. For me, I struggled a lot because I really wanted to continue with my undergrad style, going to classes, interact with the professors and ask questions and pay attention during class. But that kind of ate up a lot of studying time. So my class ends at 4 or 5. I go home, eat dinner, 6, 7. But then I only had like 2-3 hours to kind of sit down and digest material that I learned about in class, while my classmates just watched the recorded lectures times 2 speed. So they were able to like go through lectures really quickly and had a lot of time digesting the material by themselves. So it really depends, but you want to get quick with what studying habit and style works for you.
Just building off of that too, I would say that's something to consider when you're looking at what med school you may attend, just their style of curriculum, because Kaiser is pretty unique in that we not only have mandatory classes, but we do a flipped classroom. So we do pre-work ahead of time. And then once we're in class, we do sort of case-based learning or discussion-based. We have classes Monday through Friday, except for Thursday, we're in clinic, but Monday through Friday, we have class 8:30 to 12:30. And so while we're in class that time, of course, we're just doing discussions, case-based learning. And then we have like the pre-work that we'll have to do for the next day, or you could do it ahead of time. But I think that's also definitely something that you have to learn to work with if you're not used to that style of learning. So just depending on how you've succeeded in the past, knowing what type of curriculum you're going into for med school.
Yeah, in the complete opposite side of the spectrum, USC, we're all like our classes aren't mandatory except for like a couple like health justice or like our intro to clinical medicine once a week. But other than that, they're not required classes for lecture, and all our tests are NBME based, which means like from like the national board. So most of us, including myself, don't go to lecture. We just study third-party materials, but for like step 1, which I like because it gives me a lot of flexibility where I spend my morning, like almost said earlier, doing Anki and then watching the third-party materials and doing the Anki for that. But it's nice because I get that flexibility throughout the week too. Like say if I want to do my hobbies, like I try to go to the gym once a day, or like 3 times a week I go to Muay Thai, and I'm able to fit that in because we don't have those required classes. So yeah.
All right, we have one final question. I know we're close on time. So what is one piece of advice you would give yourself to your pre-med self starting on this journey? And if everyone can go around and answer, that would be awesome.
I can start. I would say take your time. I think in undergrad, pre-med advisor, though, like I didn't always listen to them. One of them said, like, you'll be a doctor for the rest of your life. And so, we're all hoping that we're living for a while here. And to, like people have already said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like you really do have to like simmer into this, because it's not just like the time, but it's also, the money. Like you don't want to like take out loans and then realize this isn't for you. I mean, if you do, that's fine. Like life goes on, but also like you just want to really like simmer and marinate and just take one step at a time in this journey. And I think that for a lot of people who do it for the, almost like the humanitarian reasons in a sense, like it's worth it. So take your time.
Definitely giving yourself grace too. I think it's super easy to get bogged down in your path and try and think that you have to have the best score, like the best grades, or be doing all of the activities. But just don't overburden yourself. Give yourself grace, and it's okay if it doesn't always work out the first time, or if you get a bad grade on a test. It'll all work out.
Yeah, I love both of those. And mine is similar to Mariana. I always just say it's okay. Like whatever you're panicked about, whatever you're really stressed about, and you think like, if this happens or because that happened, like it's the end of the world, it's the end of like my application. It's not. We've all been through a lot of things, and every time we figure it out, even if it's not okay for a little bit, it's going to be okay. And so just trying to like sit with that and really believe it, because I think it's something that's hard to believe when you're in the moment. And I still tell myself that now, but it's going to be okay.
I think for me as a first-gen student, I was always like very self-reliant growing up. I couldn't like turn to my family or my parents. I'm an only child and have siblings. So I think once I got to college, I learned the hard way that I need to ask for help. And I wish I would have known that sooner. And finding the right mentors really gets you far in life. So I would tell myself to be more open to help and to find the people who will support me on my journey. And that'll, get you a long way.
I think you should try to find your why as soon as possible. I think that'll keep you going even when it gets difficult. And also just don't forget where you come from, stay grounded, don't forget the people you came to serve. And I think that'll help you become the person you want to be, even when things get, really, really crazy.
I would say take care of yourself physically and mentally. Your health is your priority.
I would say enjoy the ride. I was 7 years ago, I decided that I wanted to pursue medicine, and it's only now here that I'm actually there. I remember being so scared of those 7, all that time that I was going to be wasting just trying to get into medical school. But in reality, it's been incredible. I've met really important people. I've done things that I really care about. So just as you're going along, as you're taking these steps forward, make sure to be grateful and to look around and just enjoy and be proud of yourself.
I would say the biggest thing is to not lose yourself, to continue doing your passions and your interests, because those will continue to fuel you not only outside of academics, but in your academics as well. And they clearly show through when you're passionate about something.
I would say don't be afraid to ask for help. You'll be really surprised as you move on to your career that there are a lot of physicians and a lot of medical students who are willing to help you in your application or just to give you general advice. So that's something to keep in mind.
I would say just remind yourself that you are capable and you are smart enough to do this. I know many people here like came from community college. I remember when I was in community college, I felt like there was no way I could do this. There's no way I was smart enough. I was considering doing different careers, but just know that like if you put in the work and you put your mind to it, that you are capable of doing it.
Yeah, second thing on that, I will say, or I would go back and say, that your dreams are not up for debate. When I was in high school, they said I wasn't going to go to college. I wasn't cut out for it. When I was in community college, they said I wasn't UCLA material. When I was in UCLA, they said I wasn't med school material. But, like it was just said right now, like you're smart, you're capable. A lot of my first gens in here, like it's an uphill battle. But once you're on the other side, you're going to be ready to help the next generation, which I think is just a beautiful thing. So just stay grounded in your why. And again, your dreams are not up for debate. I don't care who tells you no, like there's always a way, and it's not linear. There's going to be peaks and valleys, and just enjoy the ride.
And did everybody go through it? Everyone? Cool. Well, thanks everyone for coming on a Saturday morning. I know that we all like to sleep in on Saturday mornings or do other things, and thank you guys for making time to come and speak and inspire and some of the folks I know and some of the folks I got to know. So it was a pleasure getting to meet everyone else here. And again, thank you for giving us your Saturday morning. And hopefully we could have you come back. Some of you as second years and some of you as residents. And and thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you again.